Welcome to Watermark's Church Leadership Podcast, a conversation with church leaders for church leaders. I'm your host, John McGee. Thanks so much for joining us today. Well, hey friends, welcome back. We've got a really fun episode today. We're talking about creativity, and I brought two of the most creative people that I know in the studio today. David Penuel, he's our creative director. Caitlin Van Wagner, she is our senior director of communications. Guys, welcome, and thank you for being here.
Thanks, John. Glad to be here.
John.
So I feel like we start so many episodes here with kind of, some incremental weather report in Dallas. And so we just had one, another event.
Been a tough few days.
Well, some of us more than others. So we had really, really heavy winds come through, lots of trees down, roofs damaged, lots of power out. Some areas affected more than others. Caitlin, I think you got it pretty bad.
Yep, my power's out.
For how many days?
We're on day 2.
And so, which means you have to do lots of things in the dark.
So many things, all of which can be difficult.
Including
getting dressed.
Yeah.
In the dark this morning.
You have a story about that?
John, I don't know if you know this about me, but I like to be put together.
You do.
And I like things to work. I think a lot about what color story I'm going to pick out for my outfit today. I think about structure.
We're so similar.
I know. I've always felt that about us. But today I got to work, and about 10:30 a.m., so we're well into our work day. I'm sitting in a meeting, and I look down.
You got to work at like 8:30.
Yeah.
And then at 10:30.
So this is 2 hours in.
Gotcha.
And I'm in a semi-serious meeting, and I just interrupt my employee, and I go, oh my goodness. Look down, and I'm wearing 2 different shoes because I got dressed in the dark. And to be fair, they are both versions of a white sneaker, but one of them has a very big pink V on it, and the other does not, and they both feel very different on my foot. And so we all got a giggle out of that today.
And in the light, they look different. In the
They
dark,
look very different.
Good. There's a good sermon illustration there.
It's been a tough morning.
And Caitlin, you're one of the most talented, smart, impressive people I know. But what do you always say about your impressiveness?
That I get less impressive with time.
Yep. So this was evidence of the mismatch.
My friends that know me well.
Yes.
But yes.
Caitlin, if this is your first interaction with Caitlin, she is kind of girl boss around here. Very big deal. Always sharp, on the ball, and she couldn't dress herself this morning.
Nope.
That's where we've been living the last couple of days. But we've got some good content here. I think it's going to be really helpful. I want to talk about creativity. I want to talk, guys, to leaders. If I had one hope, it would be to kind of demystify some of our thoughts about creativity. Sometimes how I think we make it way too complicated, and we make it the domain of other people and not ourselves. So I want to make sure that the people leave with some good ideas. They've got some handholds about their own kind of creativity, their own path towards that. But David, before we get going, why should we even care about this as leaders? Those working in the church, why should we even care about creativity? Why should we strive to be creative?
Well, I care about creativity because I've read my Bible, John. And so this is a podcast for church leaders, so hopefully you guys have read it too. And if you've ever started reading your Bible from the beginning, you will know that God created.
Yeah.
Those are the first words of our Bible. So
right.
You look at Genesis 1, in the beginning, God created, and he created, a little bit later, it says, human beings in his own image, in the image of God, he created them. Yeah. And so God is a creator. He's the most creative being in the universe, and he tells us he's made us in his image. Yeah. So we have the opportunity as believers to be a reflection of our God as we're his image bearers. Yeah. And one of the ways, not the only way, obviously, but one of the ways we can reflect God's glory is by being creative. Yeah. And then another place that I always kind of take people to in Scripture is all throughout the book of Exodus, but in chapters 31, and then there's a whole chunk in 35 through 40, when God is giving the instructions for constructing the tabernacle, a place where his glory would be present to the people, and also a place that would point us to Jesus. Mm-hmm. There's so much of the tabernacle that is prophetic and foreshadowing of the coming of Christ, but when he is giving instructions for that, he says about this guy, Bezalel, all right? He says, I have filled him with the Spirit of God, giving him great wisdom, ability, and expertise in all kinds of crafts. So there it is, arts and crafts in your Bible, in the book of Exodus. And he said, have every skillful person, not just this one dude, among you. Come and make all that the Lord has commanded. And this is actually the first time in Scripture you see a person being labeled as filled with the Spirit of God.
Really?
And it's a
That's the first one.
creative person.
How about that? I would have missed that on a test.
So you're filled with the Spirit of God with a spirit of creativity to make all the things God's created. So our creative team, we have our own little sub-mission statement that we say all the time, and it's reflecting our Creator. We make things that point to Jesus and build up the church. And we think that's what that group of people were doing in the book of Exodus. And so we think it's a really important part of being a believer and being a church leader.
I love it. I love it. You know, and the other thing I would just add, I mean, those are fantastic. Better than I'd hoped you'd say, honestly, David.
Hey, you have low expectations. I'm always going to exceed
It's the secret to happiness in life. You know, is that it's just fun too. You know, it's fun to have a creative idea, be part of a creative process, be on a team that's kind of creating things. I mean, you guys have that's your job. It's in your title, David. You guys have a ton of fun over there. It's fun to watch you. We'll talk about that in our next episode about leading creatives, but I just think it's fun. It's a fun way to work, to use your gifts, to invest, to build up the church. It's also, it can just be personally a ton of fun. So to this end, to kind of try to make this, I think, accessible, not something that's a domain of, the really, really hyper, like traditionally creative person that you have in your mind, but to give it, kind of make it accessible to all of us. I've got two resources for you. One, it's a TED Talk I watched years ago. It's called Everything is a Remix. It's by Kirby Ferguson. I believe it was shot like in 2012. And so what he does is he takes Bob Dylan's career and basically he just shows that Bob does one of three things, but he's not really creative in the sense that like he just makes stuff up out of nowhere. He either copies, he transforms, or he combines other ideas. And when you watch that, I think you will resonate with that and go, yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense to me. That the creativity, generally, when we think about it, is creating ideas out of absolute thin air. And that can happen. But generally, what you're doing is you're copying something, you're transforming an existing idea, or you're combining two other ideas. And then, so the other resource I want to point you to, this was a gem of a little book. It was written in 1939 by a guy named William Young. He was an ad agency executive, I assume, and he wrote this book called A Technique for Producing Ideas. Such a 1939 title. It's now public domain, and we will load it up I'll load it up with some of my annotations in the show notes, and I'll try to load it up on Amazon, and you can download it on an e-reader for free. It should be like the 5 days around when it launches. Do not buy it. Just email us, and we'll give it to you for free. So he has this five-step process. And when I read this, I go, that is exactly how this works. The first one is to gather material. So that's both, you're thinking about just generally learning in life. It's all the things you've ever learned. And then specifically when you're trying to solve a problem or come up with ideas, it's learning all about that thing, whatever it is. And so it's new knowledge plus old knowledge. The second thing you do is to just kind of think about this. And this is, we might call it brainstorming, but you're trying to combine new ideas that you've just picked up with old ideas that you've had lying around, combine all of them into new ideas. And this is like you're brainstorming, you're just writing down all your ideas, or however, in front of a whiteboard with the team, whatever it is. You're just kind of brain dumping and seeing if you can make connections. And then number three, I think this will resonate with people. You just take a break. You stop, like when you've gone as far as you can go and you don't quite have that breakthrough idea, you just take a break and you do something fun. You go for a walk. For me, it's running. And sometimes it can just be to sleep and you just to pray, hey God, I don't yet have the answer for this. When I wake up, would you just like give it to me? And so then the fourth kind of step is the idea. And he just says the idea appears like out of nowhere. You will have clarity. You will have connections, and it will just kind of make sense. And at that point, you write it down. And then this last step is development. That's where you take it and you refine it. You share it with other people, and they tell you this part of it really does seem to have some legs. This one could be refined, and then you rework it and you shop it some more. You talk about it, and then you have your kind of creative idea. So gather material, think, take a break. The idea will appear, and then development. And I think it is a really great framework, and it's something that anybody can do. And I think it will make sense and will make creativity feel really, really accessible. So, do you guys have any reactions to either that video or that outline there? Does that resonate with you?
Well, it's interesting. I have never read A Technique for Producing Ideas by William Young from 1939, I think you said. But you did just describe essentially the process that our creatives at our church go through when we're working on something. So I do have a couple thoughts just on a few of those points. The think, like the brainstorming portion. There's a group of consultants called the Table Group. Patrick Lencioni is the founder and leader of that group. But he's got a framework called Working Genius that everybody on our team has taken. And two of those geniuses that you bring to work are wonder and invention. And there's a good slice of our team that possess those geniuses. And whenever we have a new project coming up, we call it WE meetings, WI meetings, where we get together all the people with wonder and invention.
I love it.
And it's a free-for-all brainstorm. We're not trying to come to any conclusions. And I do think that's a mistake a lot of people make, and me included. I don't have wonder and invention in my genius. And the mistake is you get people in the room for a brainstorm, and then you start to present all the reasons why ideas won't work, or you try to pick an idea right there in the brainstorm. And we've kind of got a rule. When we have a wonder invention meeting, it's brainstorm only, no bad ideas, and we're just going to capture all the ideas. And then we're going to do the next thing on the list, which is take a break and think about it. And so that's been really helpful for us up until this point of just having those wonder and invention meetings where we're like, let's just take all the materials and see what possibilities exist. We don't have to come to any conclusions at the end of this meeting, and we can't say no to any ideas.
I love it. Yeah, that's good about these meetings. One of my thoughts on this whole idea of just like thinking and brainstorming, he didn't talk about the group so much, but for me, that's always the way that I have good ideas. And one of the things I've learned, maybe this is helpful to others, is it really does matter who's in the room. And I've just found, like, pound for pound, in specifically you two, if you two are in the room, I will be a part of an idea generation process that yields great results. And there's some other people who have, it probably is a working genius, candidly, some different gifts that aren't as helpful in those moments. But I always feel like if I'm trying to solve a problem, I come to you two, and it's just uncanny, And so, Caitlin, we just finished our church leaders conference, which was so fun, man. You guys did such a great job. So many creative elements that I'd love for us to talk about some of them on this podcast. But, Caitlin, I brought this idea. I said, I want to encourage some pastors or some leaders somehow. I know that's a thing that I want to do. I've got this idea. One of our speakers, his name was Jonathan Bacluta. He's a pastor in Waco, used to be on staff here. What he does as a way to encourage people is he gives out shoes to people, oftentimes like, Nike Jordans. And he just says, I thought about you, and I give you that. So I want to encourage people. I know JP is going to be on the stage, but I don't yet know who. And I was just really puzzling over that. I've got, I had a list of different ideas. And so I said that out loud to you, Caitlin, and you said, do you remember?
Well, that day was Administrative Professionals Day.
Yeah, that's what it was going to be on.
Yep, on the day that the CLC fell on.
Yeah, and so I was like, that's it. That's exactly who we should. Normally, at a church leaders conference, you get, these accomplished pastors, and you bring them up and you cheer for them, which is very appropriate to do. But we don't often celebrate, the administrative assistants. So I went on. I found that we had 3 administrative assistants that they were 70 or older. And we brought them up, and we picked out some, JP picked out some pink and red shoes that were these Jordan low tops. And we called them up, brought them up, took them off stage. They put their shoes on. You guys finished the announcements. We brought them back up. And the people just cheered like crazy.
Oh, so fun.
For them. And, there was a lot of great things that happened at CLC this year, but I've heard about that one specifically about, hey, that's what it looks like to encourage. And that was really creative. And now I want to be creative in the way that I encourage other people. And so that idea came because I was shopping it with you in terms of the the thinking part, it came because I was talking it out with you. And so I think one learning is you can bring half-baked ideas. That's okay. And then another one is it really does matter who you brainstorm with. So David, any other thoughts on just that outline there, those 5 points?
Yeah. I want to have one thought on the shoes about you. And that is, first of all, that moment where we're encouraging administrative professionals with shoes was a creative moment, but it's not maybe the first thing that comes to the audience's mind when they saw, this is a podcast on church leadership and creativity. They might think, how I'm thinking about my graphic designers. I'm thinking about a filmmaker. I'm thinking about like traditional art, which is a huge field of creativity. Yep. But there's also like programmatic creativity or strategic there's a lot of different forms. Communication creativity,
project management creativity.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of creative disciplines, and we need to think, I think, with the same sort of grid of creativity for all different things. And sometimes we just need to expand our minds. And I think you're really great at what you just described of, and this isn't meant to be derogatory. You're great at bringing half-baked ideas. Like, I don't know.
You excel at not being able to complete the thought.
Ever had a full baked idea.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But you shop, and you do shop them around. Yeah. You don't necessarily get a room together and you're like, all right, here's a half baked idea. What does everybody think? And let's put it on the whiteboard. But you have constant side conversations and text messages of like, is there anything to this idea? And so know yourself, know how you operate, lean into it, and invite others into it. And so we have just learned how to yes and your ideas and work with you. Holly has, others on your team have, and it ends up like bringing your ideas to full bakedness and beauty in one. And like, you're right, that was a great moment, but it started late in the process and super half baked. Yeah. But you stuck with it, and you were like, there's something there. This is going to bake. And so I think a lesson from that is just be persistent with your half-baked ideas and keep bringing other people in and see what grows.
I love it.
The other thought that I had was on that point of taking a break. And this was written in 1939. And I think today we take a break a little bit differently. And so this is just a little bit of like a twist to throw into people who are listening to this podcast. For 50 days at the beginning of this year, I stopped listening to podcasts because my brain needed a break.
I love it.
I was listening to podcasts on every run, drive, and even shower, so that I was constantly educating myself, learning, sharpening, getting better, but I wasn't thinking. Yeah. And I noticed I wasn't as creative as I once was, and it's because my brain needed some space. And so after that 50-day reset, I sort of have some new guardrails in place so that there are moments throughout my day and week that are set aside just for thinking. And I don't think enough leaders today have time in their week blocked off to only think.
Yeah. I just got back from a mini vacation. We took my oldest son and his wife, just spent a few days with them before they had their baby. And I will be a grandpa, which is crazy to say out loud. But I'm on the beach, and I didn't have any headphones in, and I was walking, and I said, I'm going to walk 15 minutes out, 15 minutes back. And my brain exploded. It just exploded with ideas, and I didn't write anything down. I got back and I was just, feverishly just trying to remember all the great things. And it was because I had no other distractions whatsoever. And so, David, I think it's really good. It's just, hey, turn the phone off, shut your laptop, go for a walk, or just drive home in silence. I get lots of great ideas just driving home, not turning on any noise. I think it's really, really good, really, really good point. So one of the things I wrote down here, I'd love for one or both of you to talk about it, is the value of constraints. And so a lot of times we think about creativity, we think about standing in front of a whiteboard and anything is possible. I have found it's actually hard to work there. And if there's a few constraints, sometimes it actually helps kind of focus some of the energy. So we've got some stories from CLC, but anything come to mind when you think about the value of constraints as it relates to creativity?
Yeah, we call this building the sandbox on our team. So So I think what I found is what's not helpful to a creative is just saying, do whatever you want, right? Because there's absolutely nothing for them to grab onto. And then they also can often spend a lot of time creating energy in the wrong direction when it turns out there probably already were constraints in place that just were unvoiced. And so a little bit of direction goes a long way. And the balance is you don't want it to be too constrictive, right? So it's building a sandbox that allows for some creativity, but it has clear boundaries. That's why on my team, we spend a whole lot of time on the brief writing process at the very beginning of the process before it ever gets to a creative to understand, hey, what are we creating this for? What's the purpose? Who are we creating this for? Who is the audience? What's the idea it needs to carry? What are all the different deliverables? Where is it going to go? So we know how big this concept needs to be. And then are there any unspoken creative guardrails, right? Does the person who's going to be reviewing it really hate the color red? That's a personal preference, but I'd really like to know that before I get into it. So and then what are any other creative direction pieces? So that's why we actually spend, and why I think you should be, if we call them communications coordinators on my team, and they kind of do the account service around here is what we would call it. But they spend a whole lot of time on that upfront brief writing process, which is an extra step and takes a whole lot of time. But the whole purpose of that is to create a sandbox in which the creatives can thrive.
Yeah, it's good.
And get to better work faster.
It's good.
So Caitlin saw some potential in me a few years ago. I had come out of a career of 18 years of youth ministry, and I was fine staying in that. But Caitlin said, no, you're our church's creative director. And so I got the title, I got the job, and then I had to sit down with Caitlin and Cindy and Trisha, and I had to humbly say, what is a creative director?
What do I do?
And how do I be it?
And for clarity, you're my boss. I'm not. So it makes it sound you work for me. I work for you, sir.
I know, but you made me be this. And so when I sat down, this is what they taught me was, and I wrote it down, and I follow this to this day, the build a sandbox principle. Here's what I wrote down. Define the creative boundaries, inspire the sandcastle, and allow creatives maximum freedom to play within the established parameters. And so that's my goal as a creative director each and every day is like, if I can just define the boundaries, give them some inspiration, and then I have got to get out of the way. The worst thing you can do with somebody who's creative is show them something and say, make this.
Yep.
The best thing you can do is go, I want it to make people feel this way, and don't do these two things, and then see what they do. You'll be amazed.
I love it.
My favorite example of that principle came from my agency days when we were talking about the importance of giving creatives clear and inspiring briefs, and it's stayed with me ever since. We were talking about what would a good brief have looked like in the 1400s when the Pope asked Michelangelo to build the Sistine Chapel.
Huh.
I doubt he slid him across the table of another painting and said, here's a painting, copy this on top of the Sistine Chapel. Yeah. I doubt he said, paint a picture of Adam and God touching fingers and with these exact colors, and I want it to look exactly like this. I bet it went something like, celebrate and inspire people with the glory of God. That's the type of brief we're looking for. Mm-hmm. But you have to have the understanding before it ever gets to creative to give a clear and inspiring brief.
It's good. Yeah, I think, so we're going to talk about this next episode we're going to do is actually how to lead and work with creatives. And so you guys just, it's interesting. You can't even turn your brain off to not think about that. So save some of those thoughts. But I've seen you guys do this. And so, David, for our opener, for CLC, it was a kind of really big, dramatic video. Do you want to talk about the constraints that you gave Jordan, who was working on that project?
Yeah, so Jordan is a talented filmmaker on our team, and we produce a lot at Watermark. We have a lot of ministries, we have a lot of communications needs, and so we have a really clear process for that projects go through. Yeah. And I just had a hunch that independent from our process, Jordan had some creative potential that was untapped. And so one of the boundaries and constraints I put on him is I worked with his project manager who kind of manages his time, and I asked for extra time to be set aside, and separate from the process. And then we just gave the task to Jordan with the theme of the conference and a small team that he doesn't normally collaborate with to collaborate with.
Yeah.
So instead of working with your other filmmakers or graphic designers or others on our creative team, I want you to work with our production director and our worship leader. And I want you three to come up with an opener.
Yeah.
And you're not allowed to talk to your other filmmakers or to go through our normal process.
Yeah.
And I want to see what you come up with. And I think it's going to be great, but it might be absolute trash. And if it is, I'm going to pull the plug and you're going to spend a month working on it and we're not going to use it. And that's okay. We're going to learn from it.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. Well, I just think, I don't know if we talk about this very often about constraints. Normally we think about them as an obstacle to overcome rather than a gift, to kind of be leveraged. And that's just one of the things I want to make sure we bring out here. So, if you don't have unlimited money, that actually can be a gift, or you don't have as much time, or something rolls against you. I would just encourage you to think about, hey, what's the creative potential here? And it's one of the reasons why so many preachers love going verse by verse, because it constrains them. They don't get to talk about anything Christian under the sun. They now have to talk about these passages, and that's where you'll have these amazing illustrations or insights, and they are, quote unquote, constrained. That we're going to talk about this one paragraph. And so I just want you, as you think about creativity, don't discount the value of constraints. So the other thing I want to make sure you don't discount is the value of prayer. And you would just expect that one. Here we are on a Church Leaders podcast. But I saw this one in action at CLC when John Elmore closed the conference. And so he had some, I won't give it away, but he had this amazing illustration about Chiquita bananas. And it was, it was one of the most amazing illustrations I've heard. And I asked him later, I said, how many times have you shared that? He goes, it's the very first time. And I said, normally we're talking about what he's going to share. And I know the talk start to finish. And I was like, we didn't talk about this. When did that come to you? And he goes, literally, I've been praying about this, for months. And I just one last time was just praying, God, hey, if you want to give me anything that you want me to share with these people, would you please? And it was by far, and this is like literally moments before he goes up, and it was by far the most powerful part of the message. And I just thought when he did that, people are weeping and they're falling down, and you had audible groans, and all he did was just pray, and so. David, back to your call to creativity being like a filling of the Spirit, really more, probably we would say more yielding to the Spirit. Don't discount prayer. Just don't discount prayer through this creative process.
No, I wanted to capitalize on that with just a quick example. We started this podcast talking about a storm that came through Dallas yesterday and Caitlin's shoes. And so today we had a meeting where we were presenting creative work that's in process and giving feedback. And we always start that meeting with prayer. And I started with just a very small devotional thought about how I went for a walk this morning through a park where a bunch of trees had been just destroyed. Huge trees, broken in half, limbs everywhere. And I was like, our God is so powerful. And that wind, with just wind, he destroyed these enormous trees. And I was marveling at that, and then I just stopped and I said, it's the same Spirit of God that is available to us to empower our creativity. And so before we present work, give feedback, do work, let's stop, remind ourselves that God is here with us. He lives inside of us. His Spirit is empowering our work, and let's ask him to work in and through us. And we just stopped and prayed, and we were like, God, we acknowledge that your power is with us, and we want your power to blow through all of our work. And we do that on the daily. We really try to discipline ourselves not to begin any meeting where we're working on some creative work without inviting God into the process with us.
It's good. It's good. It's our competitive advantage, right? I mean, it's a thing we have that others don't. And I think I've said this probably 15 times through the years on the podcast. So it's amazing to me that we wouldn't take advantage of the Spirit of God, and not take advantage, but cry out for the empowerment of the Spirit of God. And it should be the first place that we start. Don't make it more complicated than starting there. So a couple other thoughts. One, just to make sure that you capture all your ideas. So what's interesting, we're talking about CLC. That's what our most recent project where we worked together. A lot of ideas are just rolled forward. We can't execute them, but we capture them, and then it's amazing. 1, 2, 3, 4 years later, it's just the right time. And so we had a testimony this year of a church. It was a pastor who had fallen, and we wanted to share the story about the way the church handled that. And it was always something I wanted to share, but it just made sense this year. And had I not written it down, we wouldn't have been able to bring that forward. And it was just the right time. And so I would just say sometimes we have the right idea, we just don't have the right time. And you want to make sure you have some system, even if it's as simple as just an Evernote file. And you don't even have to organize it. Just make sure that you capture all these ideas, and there will be a day when it's either that idea as it is or combined with something else in the right time. You'll just be glad you didn't lose those. So another one I wanted to talk about, and I love your take on this, is how to know, like for yourself, when are you most creative? When are you not? Where are you most creative? Where are you not? And then emotional states, kind of when and where you're not, physical states as well. So how to know just your own unique kind of pattern of where it is that you seem to find creative ideas. Do you guys have any thoughts on that for yourself or for others that you worked with?
I think for understanding yourself is really important. And so, and how you work best. So for me, from a creative perspective, I need more than anything, at least a night or two of sleep, like between ideation and execution, or even discerning if it's the right idea. I need to think on it and chew on it. And so I get my best. My brain just needs a couple of days of sleep, thinking about it multiple times throughout the week. And so that's for me something that I need. I need at least 2 nights sleep if I'm going to think on it, chew on a problem, or even a final product. I was overhearing from other people, I was overhearing 2 of our graphic designers talking to their project manager the other day. And they were just talking to her about how she's trying to assign them out work and figuring out how they work. And one of them really likes to work on 2 projects at one time. Huh. She really likes to go in between a big concepting project and maybe something that's more layout work, and her brain needs to switch back and forth. The other really would rather go heads down for a shorter amount of time and just knock it out and then move to the next one. Yeah. And these are 2 kind of more relatively new. They've been here a little less than a year, but understanding how different creatives. So I think it's understanding how you work, if you are creative, and then communicating that to the people that work around you so they can set you up for success. But that was such an interesting conversation to overhear, and it was met with a lot of, okay, great, then I'm going to assign you projects differently. But having a respect for creative people often work in different ways from one another.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, for myself, that's interesting. Would I rather work on multiple things or one? I think I'm more of a multiple things. I think that engages my brain holistically. Rested for sure. If I'm fatigued, I have no good ideas. Physical activity, so running, not running fast, but running slow. Mm-hmm. My brain just explodes with ideas. Reading a book from 1939 makes my head explode with ideas. Reading, I found reading obscure books that somebody that I really respect tells me about that no one else has read. I don't know why. I come with a sense of anticipation around that. If it's a New York Times bestseller, I'm going to hate it. But if it's something a little bit obscure that I wouldn't have been exposed to otherwise, it really, really does help me. So I know myself, and so if I'm stuck, those are some of the places that I'll try to put myself, so that I will kind of be in this creative flow state. So I think one of a couple things I want to close with, but one of them is, guys, I think if we try creative things, if we try to be creative, oftentimes we're trying to help people understand something and then take action. So it matters. And if we bring a really creative solution to that, they're going to understand it more and they will take action. And they're like, the kingdom needle will move. And so like the stakes are really high. So, but when we do that and we take big swings, especially, sometimes we fail and it just doesn't go the way we thought it would. The people don't think you're a genius. They don't like your idea. And in fact, they might think it's really dumb, and that by proxy, you're dumb as well. So do you have any thoughts about just that, the inherent risk of being creative, that brings about the potential of something just not going well, and you not looking smart or gifted or a great leader? Any thoughts on that?
John, we have so many things from Watermark's history that we could look back on and we're
yes.
Can you believe we did that? That you look back and you go, that was so ridiculous.
Yes.
What's
top of mind for you?
Oh my gosh. The things that I'm picturing are like old pictures of stage designs.
Yeah.
Or just like we built the Alamo on stage. Why do we have the Alamo?
That was probably a good idea.
Remember?
Back then. I don't know. That was a bad idea, but it might have been. Yeah.
There's a lot. There's a lot of things.
We launched a TV station during COVID.
Yeah.
Why did we do that?
Because we could.
When we did that version of a resurrection song that had a rap in the middle of it.
Was that on Easter? Okay.
When it's like, we never rap.
But I got a good idea, guys.
But let's rap. There's so many of those things that, in the moment, you got to go, everybody thought, this is awesome. This is really creative and really innovative. Yeah. And then you look back and you kind of laugh, or you go, that was cheesy, or why do we do that, or who thought of that? And so you have to have a constitution to go, we may get laughed at. We may laugh at ourselves. And you have to have the ability to laugh at yourself. You can't let that hold you back, because if you do, then you miss out on everything.
So good.
And so you got to accept that reality of like, hey, some of this stuff, it's genuinely going to be awesome. And some of it's going to be, can you believe we ever wore that? Like everything you ever wore, you thought was cool when you wore it, and you look back and it wasn't. And so it's just like, be in the moment. Don't worry about what people will think or what tomorrow will bring. And do it together. Like, don't do stuff in isolation. If Caitlin is telling me, hey, I kind of have a pause, then we need to slow down. We need to pause. So, I mean, you got to accept that's a reality. That's part of it.
Yeah. I just feel like, it's a sign that you're trying, honestly, because if you probably got a playbook that works, whatever it is that you do, you've got a playbook that works. And so if you just keep doing that, you won't ever fail. You won't ever look dumb. If you try something, you might. And if you do and it doesn't go well, then what that shows above all else is that you are trying. You're trying to improve it. You're trying to make it better, and you should wear it as a badge of honor. And I would encourage you. This is really for the next episode, but encourage failure, celebrate it. You were trying. That was a big swing. It didn't work. What'd you learn? Don't waste failure, but don't be afraid of it, and don't be afraid to put your creative ideas out. So, David, any other so that was kind of like a warning, but when you think about like kind of warnings of creativity, do you have any other any things we should look out for?
Yeah, I can just tick through these really quick. When you are applying creativity in a church, there's just some principles to keep in mind. Creativity is about creator reflection, not self-expression.
So good.
And worldly creativity is most often about express yourself. And we are creative not to express ourselves, but to reflect our creator. So creator reflection, not self-expression. We are about service, not showmanship. So I remind our production and our worship teams all the time, we are hosting a congregation of God's people for a worship service. We are not putting on a worship show.
Yeah.
And so this is about providing a service. So if we can remove distraction, allow people to connect with God and one another, that's the service we're providing. We're not trying to put on a show and dazzle people here. We're about inspiring, not impressing. And so we're not trying to be impressive with anything we do. We're trying to inspire people to have a bigger vision of God and who he is and how they can connect with him and live for his glory. Yeah. And then lastly, we have to remember, it's kind of back to some things we've already talked about. With creativity, we need to think in terms of sensitivity over strategy. So we're not trying to figure out what's the most strategic thing we can do, but God, what do you want us to do, and what is the most pleasing thing to you? So we want to be sensitive to the Spirit of God before we just use and this is a warning for me, is I can be strategically creative, and I can lean on those gifts to go, oh, I know what the most strategic thing we should do to solve this problem is, rather than let's seek God and see what he would have us do.
So good.
Sensitivity over strategy.
So good. So good. Well, friends, I hope there's something here that's helpful to you. I hope you think about being creative, trying to help other people around you be creative within, the proper balance. And I think, David, I would just close, I think, with the first 2 points you just made were essentially, don't make this about you when you think about creativity. And so if you want to challenge, this one is hard for me, but I've learned to lean into it, is to give away your best creative idea. So if you see somebody and they're working on something and you go, oh, I've been sitting on this one, like I really want to use this at an opportune time. I was kind of hoping I would get the spotlight with this one. Give it away. And you give it away. And I really have come to see it as an exercise of faith. What I'm doing is I'm holding on to this thing, so that in the moment when I need it, it's going to be there. And when I give it away to someone else that I think it could serve really, really well, I'm saying in faith, God, I trust you that you have unlimited creativity. You're going to bring something else to me. And so in faith, I give this away. This isn't fundamentally about me. I don't do it all the time, but on my best days, I've learned to reflexively, when I wonder, should I just do. It's like, I've been thinking about this one. I think there's something here. Run with this, and I hope it goes well for you. And so don't make this about us. Make this fundamentally all things about Christ and about his church, and not about us. This is not a talk. This is not a podcast about how you can be awesome and be seen as such. It's about how to build up God's church. And so, David, Caitlin, thank you so much for being here. Caitlin, I'm excited you got your wardrobe figured out. You're wearing matching shoes right now.
I'm wearing my gym shoes.
Yeah, which
they match.
They match.
They're not the best.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We've pulled it together.
Thanks so much. Well, friends, as always, if you have any thoughts, if you have any questions for us, you can always reach us at clp@watermark.org. That's clp@watermark.org. We'll talk to you again next time.